I think that's everyone now. So listen, thanks everybody for joining today's webinar. It's on backup and recovery for Salesforce. We'll be recording this so it can be viewed later on. If you want a copy sent to you, please get in touch and I'll be happy to send that over. And before we kick off, I'll just remind you all that we're answering questions at the end. So if you have any throughout, please pop them into the chat at the bottom of your screen and we'll answer them after. Okay, so I'll just introduce you to the team here today. We have Dara Canavan, who's our sales director. Dara's been in the backup industry for about 14 years and has pretty much seen it all when it comes to data loss and recovery. So between himself and Aaron, they'll be answering your questions later on. I'm Kirsten Savage. I look after marketing for the group. We have a mixture of technical and sales people on the call, so I'm here to bridge that gap and explain the reasons why we need backup for Salesforce. While my colleague Aaron Fox, he's one of our expert technical engineers, is here to satisfy you tech minds by demoing the backup in a few minutes. I'll briefly discuss our agenda. So we'll start off with Salesforce's recent announcement on backup and recovery. Then we'll discuss the reasons why you should backup Salesforce and whose responsibility it is. And after that, we'll give an overview of Echo's backup features, and then Aaron will demo the solution, and we'll end up with some questions. So I have a screenshot here from the Salesforce article that states that effective 31st of July 2020, data recovery as a paid feature will be deprecated and no longer available as a service. Now, why are they getting rid of it? Well, to be honest, it wasn't very good in the first place. So if you were depending on it in the past, you probably shouldn't have. But so the main reasons, I guess, they're getting rid of it is it was extremely expensive and time consuming. And it could take up to 8 weeks before you even get your data back. And even then, you weren't guaranteed 100% of that data. It was incomplete. So that didn't include metadata such as settings and customizations. And it was unreliable. So after 15 days, the deleted data was unrecoverable. So what are Salesforce's responsibilities versus your responsibilities? Well, looking after your data is a shared responsibility. So while you are the data controller, Salesforce is the data processor. Now, you'll be well aware of those terms from GDPR guidelines, but basically what it means is Salesforce is responsible for application availability. And as a processor, they're also responsible for adding, deleting, or modifying data upon a legitimate request. Now, Salesforce recommend that you keep a regular backup with a third party because as we mentioned in the previous slide, Salesforce may be responsible for a legitimate deletion request, but what about like user-performed deletions, such as human error? So it's really easy for employees to delete the wrong information by mistake or purge an account that they thought they didn't need or delete a document that they may have thought was out of date. There's also data corruption, so that could be due to a bad data load, poorly executed workflow or process builder, or an integration maybe that didn't go to plan. There's also internal security threats. So you've got like malicious insiders. And as much as we don't like to think about it, but a disgruntled employee who has access to Salesforce, well, that could be detrimental. And then you've also got your external security threats like malware, ransomware, hackers, that kind of thing. Programmatic and sync errors. So they can be caused by syncing your Salesforce with another app, which is designed to make your business processes more streamlined, but can ruin critical data if it's not performed correctly, and there's no undo option. So imagine performing a sync with another app and there's some sort of configuration error, and that results in all the names being associated with the wrong email address or something. And then you've got an illegitimate deletion. So we mentioned earlier that Salesforce will honor a legitimate request for deletion, but how can they truly know that the request is legit, or if the person asking has that power to ask for that? But all is not lost. So Echo backup and recovery for Salesforce. So like I said, Aaron will get into the demo, but these are the main features. So backup and recover all data. So that's accounts, contacts, leads, attachments, custom objects, and then your chatter activity. Is complete protection, so you can ensure your backed up data is secure and safe from any unauthorized access, and then you can revert to a previous point in time copy of that data within minutes, all the while you remain compliant with regulatory requirements. There's universal recovery, so you can perform granular backups to quickly restore your customer data, and you can also set up different backup schedules and retention policies. You can configure notifications and alerts to stay informed of the status of backup jobs, set retention rules and the number of generations you'd like to retain in your backup repositories, and finally automate management of the various generations of data so you don't have to maintain multiple versions manually. So they are the main things. I'm now going to pass you over to Aaron, who's going to take what I just said and demonstrate it in action. So I will just stop sharing my screen, Aaron.
Thanks for that, Kirsten. Hi, everyone. Yes, so as Kirsten mentioned, I am going to do a run through of our monitoring portal. And then what I'll do is jump into the software itself and show you how simple it is to set up a backup of Salesforce, run through some of the key features of restoring your Salesforce database, and then sort of show you how monitoring is done on a daily basis by our support team here. So I'll just share out my screen in 2 seconds. Okay. So what we're looking at here is the dashboard of our monitoring portal. To give a quick overview, you can see some of the tabs here on the left-hand side. So you have your dashboard, which will give you an overview of everything under your account, the amount of activities run in a day, the quota used, the storage used, and backup status. You also have some other features over here, your backup activities, which will give you a historical view of all your backups, your backup status, which will show you the most recent scheduled backup job. You have your reports, you can schedule custom reports, or you can schedule backup status reports, storage reports. And you also have your resources tab down here, which I'll jump into now in a few seconds. So what we want to kind of start off with is to show you how simple it is to actually create an account. So in the instance, you select the settings wheel and a new user. And it's just as simple as popping in the name of the account you wish to create, the contact email, and the quota you want to assign. Once you have that done, we'll jump into the resources tab here. And from here, you'll be able to download our software for any of the OSs that you're working on. So you can see that here. So you have Windows 64, 32, Mac, and Linux. We also offer various amount of manuals, instructional manuals on our portal. We have documentations and video guides as well on how to run the software and set it up. So once you have your account created, it's a case of installing the software on a dedicated VM or desktop, wherever you wish, and then I'll jump into that now. So here we have our software, and for a demonstration purpose here, I have a Salesforce account created, but in order to actually set up a Salesforce backup, it's a case of going into Sets, New Backup Set. You want to backup from the cloud, and there you have your options for Salesforce. There's also other options there, we can dive into them a little point later. So once we select our Salesforce, it's just a case of selecting the account to connect to our Salesforce account. And then each user under Salesforce is assigned a token. And we're asking for this token just for authentication to the Salesforce account. We also offer the option to back up your production Salesforce or a sandbox Salesforce as well. Once you've entered these credentials and you've connected to your Salesforce account, you will see something like this. So you have your Salesforce database backed up then. So you can go in here and edit. You can edit the tables if you want to exclude any tables. So for example, I have excluded the task table from our backup, but you can exclude any tables that you wish, or you can keep everything and back up everything. In regards to backing up, we have the ability to add custom retentions. So as Kirsten mentioned there, a lot of the retentions will only hold for 15 days with the current Salesforce feature, but we have the ability to add any retention we want. So for argument's sake here, I have to keep 1 day for the last week, but we can go in here, we can edit this, add, and we can add in whatever retentions we want. So we can keep, for example, here every 1 day for the last year. We can keep every week for whatever amount of weeks or months you want, and so on and so forth. So we have retentions up to a couple of years if necessary. We can add them in, but it's completely down to the customer's discretion how long they want to hold their data for. We also have the ability to add separate schedules in. So you can choose to run your backup once a day, or you can choose to run your backup every hour. You also can have the ability to run weekly backups, monthly backups, completely up to yourself there. So in regards to setting up a backup job, it's fairly simple. Once you have all your retention and your schedule set up, the backup will run on schedule and then continue to back up your Salesforce database. You then also have different abilities for restoring data. So we'll just open the restore wizard here. So you can see we have two types of restores here. So we have the first being a table restore. So this performs a restore of the backed up Salesforce database at table level. Then we also have a granular restore. So there's two steps to doing a granular level restore. So the database, restore the backed up database to a local dump file. Once we have that dump file, we'll point the restore wizard to that. And then we have the option to restore individual items from that restore dump. The restore option also allows different features in relation to where you restore to. So you can restore back to the original location. This option is selected by default, and the data will be restored back to the original location. You then also have the option for an alternative location. So what this will do is this will give you the option that you can restore back to a separate Salesforce account, or again to the original location, but under a different account. So you can also restore a production Salesforce into a sandbox, or vice versa, if that's the case. Let me just close that off. So just jumping back to the portal again, guys, you also then can monitor your backup jobs, as I mentioned, and you can see how a backup job has been running. So just for argument's sake here, we'll check that account that I have set up there. And then we can see how this backup job has been running over the last couple of days. So it just puts a bit of mind at ease to make sure to know that your backup of your Salesforce databases is being monitored and is being checked. And you can also see how everything's going. And in the event that there is a warning or an error on the backup, you can simply select the backup job, and it will show you and it will highlight where the backup failed for faster troubleshooting. So that's pretty much the summary on the software itself and the portal. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us and let us know, and we'll be able to answer them as best we can.
Sorry, guys, I was on mute there. I actually do have a few questions for you, Aaron, that have popped in, or Dara, perhaps you can answer a couple of these. So this one's most likely for yourself, Dara. How is it costed?
Yeah, good question. It's always the first question. It's usually based on a per user model. So it's dependent on the amount of users within the Salesforce. And that's how we price it. If anybody has a large Salesforce user base, we can look at the overall size of the database and maybe price it based on the amount of jobs that the customer requires. But it's quite flexible in terms of price. But the quick answer is user-based pricing.
Grand. And how often is it monitored?
Probably one for Aaron, but I think I know the answer. It is monitored on a daily basis, so our guys are actively, proactively looking for errors and warnings, and then reporting them back to the customer. So for anybody that's on the call that isn't technical, anything Aaron just showed us, you don't actually need to be involved in that. You can simply just receive, daily reports, and then we'll contact you if there's any issues. And if anybody does have any further questions, maybe you can fire them in through the chat, and we'll try and get to them.
Yeah, I one here from John. Where is it stored? So where is the data stored?
Sorry, Kirsten, you just broke up me. I think I got it.
Where is data stored?
So
yeah.
That's up to the client. We have data centers in Ireland, the UK, mainland Europe, the US, and Canada. So the data location is up to the client. And we can we have in the past even split databases based on the geographical regions in accordance with the customer's compliance requirements.
Great. Alan has a question on pricing. Does user pricing apply if we have both sales and service cloud?
That's a good question, Alan. I don't know. I need to check that for you. Can you maybe if you, I'll send you a quick email afterwards, Alan, trying to get a little bit more information on how that's split. So I imagine there's two databases there. But look, let me come back to you and we'll have a chat about that if that suits.
Grand. What type of retention can be applied to the data?
The retention is totally up to the client. Obviously, we can, the most recent one we've done was a 7-year requirement. Most clients tend to hold somewhere between 1 and 3 years.
Cool. And 3 more questions. So if anyone has any more, pop them in. But this one is, what type of encryption is used?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So it's encrypted on the client side. So the data is encrypted before it leaves the customer's infrastructure, the customer site. It is a 256 AES encryption, and that's before transfer. And then again, it rests in our data center, and then it uses a 128-bit SSL encryption during the transfer as well.
Brilliant. Can you restore out of production?
Probably one for Aaron.
Yes, you can. Yes, so if you want to restore out of production, you can restore into a separate sandbox if that was the case, or vice versa. If you need to restore your sandbox, you can restore back into a production, or alternatively, you can restore into a separate Salesforce account once you have credentials, of course. If your old Salesforce account is compromised or something like that, you can restore out of production.
Thank you, Aaron. What compliance accreditations does the software have?
The software has loads of accreditations. Probably the biggest one, obviously, it's ISO 27001 certified, but also has a FIPS 140-2, which is like an encryption certification, which is quite important. Obviously, it has all the GDPR compliance and stuff like that, but it's HIPAA compliant as well. It comes with a long list of accreditations. So if anybody's actually interested in that list, I can send that across separately.
Brilliant, thanks, Sarah. I have one more question that I imagine, Aaron, is for you. So is the recovery software just the software bought separately, or do we save the Salesforce data in your cloud?
Yeah, so what happens is the software is essentially just the transfer method of the data from your Salesforce cloud across to our data center and into our cloud. So the software would just essentially be used as the transfer method, I suppose, for the data. So in the event of a restore, you can just restore the data through the software.
Yeah, just to touch on that, I suppose the software is just one part of the overall service, if you like. The software helps us back up the technology into our data center, and then we attach the management layer and the support layer on top of that.
Brilliant, thanks, guys. Well, look, I think that has been all the questions. Unless you guys have anything else to add, I think we might wrap this up.
Brilliant. And you can issue copies of this to everyone, Chris, can you?
Yes, I can. So I will absolutely, once this is finished exporting, I will send on copies. So feel free to send it on to anyone in your organization that you think might benefit from it. And do get in touch. Our emails now are on the screen. So yeah, give us a shout and we'll be in touch. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.